We embrace the diversity of our community and acknowledge the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which we honour Australian Defence Force service and sacrifice. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. Okay. Since the dedication of the Shrine of Remembrance in 1934, servicemen and women, veterans, descendants of veterans and their friends have assembled in this place, this very special place, to reflect on the tragedy of war and the hard-fought campaigns involving servicemen and women. Most importantly, we remember those veterans that are no longer with us. Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Commander Jan Gallagher. I am a Shrine Governor. And on behalf of the trustees, the governors and the wider Shrine family, I'd like to welcome you to the Shrine today, whether in person or via our online link, and I thank you for participating in this service. And now, because Commander Terry Makings is not available today, I will MC the service. Welcome to this, the HMAS Waterhen commemoration service here in the Sanctuary Shrine of Remembrance, Melbourne. I'm the Treasurer of the Naval Commemorative Committee Victoria, so that's why I got this job as well. HMAS Waterhen, one of the 5 destroyers that made up the Scrap Iron Flotilla during World War II, and they created a remarkable reputation for themselves. Their motto is fighting fit and fit to fight. We're very pleased to have Lieutenant Brendan Giolans, RAN, Mine Welfare Officer from HMAS Service, and thank you for your support, Brendan. We'll hear from Brendan in a few minutes' time as he delivers the address. Since 1934, the Shrine of Remembrance has towered over Melbourne, a city landmark, an icon of Victoria. It has been honoured by pilgrims from all across Australia, a source of wonder and sometimes astonishment to visitors from overseas. Its public and its secret history tell us much about ourselves. I trust this service will remind us of the service and sacrifice of those who served at sea during World War II and since, particularly those currently serving ashore and at sea. I'm very pleased to introduce Lieutenant Brendan Giolans. Brendan is the Seamanship Training Manager, Maritime Skills Training Centre, HMAS Cerberus. I now invite Brendan to the lectern to deliver the address. Thanks, Brendan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Jan said, my name is Lieutenant Brendan Giolans, and I'm a Maritime Warfare Officer within the Royal Australian Navy. I'm currently posted down at HMAS Cerberus, where I'm undertaking the role of Seamanship Training Manager within the Maritime Skills Training Centre. Firstly, I would like to thank members from the Shrine and also the Naval Commemoration Committee for giving me the wonderful opportunity today to deliver this address. And I also welcome everyone here wishing to pay their respects to those who served on board HMAS Waterhen. I'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where we gather today, the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their leaders, past, present and emerging. I'd also like to offer my respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples who have contributed to the defence in times of peace and war. I am honoured to give this address commemorating the loss of HMAS Waterhen exactly 82 years ago today, on the 30th of June 1942. The latter stages of the Great War saw the introduction into the Royal Navy of a number of capable and high-performance destroyers. To operate with these destroyers, the Admiralty ordered the design of a new class of destroyer leaders known as the V-class destroyers. Following the placing of the order for the V-class, work commenced on a new class of destroyer. These destroyers, ordered in 1916, were designed in the light of experience gained at Jutland. The design finally chosen was almost identical to the V-class destroyers. The initial batch of destroyers was ordered in June 1916 and became known as the W-class destroyers. These destroyers were followed in December 1916 by a repeat order of 19 ships. Included in this order was the destroyer Waterhen. Waterhen was laid down in July 1917 at the Hepburn-on-Tyne shipyards of the Palmer Shipbuilding and Iron Company. She was launched on 26th of March 1918 and completed just prior to the end of the Great War. Waterhen, with her sister ships Stuart, Vendetta, Vampire, and Voyager, became famous as the Scrap Iron Flotilla in the Mediterranean. The title came from Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, who called them Scrap Iron. He welcomed them to the Mediterranean in the bleak, cold December of 1939 as a consignment of junk, and Australia's Scrap Iron Flotilla. Ridiculed their fighting power, scoffed at their age and infirmities. Of course, there was a germ of truth in this statement. They were old. They weren't very big or very fast or very powerful. They had been laid down and completed in 1918 when ships were slow and aircraft still in their infancy. In 1933, Waterhen, as well as the destroyers Vampire, Vendetta, Voyager, and the destroyer leader Stuart, was transferred on loan to the Royal Australian Navy. Waterhen and her accompanying destroyers were commissioned into the RAN on 11th of October 1933. The newly formed Australian destroyer flotilla departed England for Australia on the 17th of October. Sailing via Suez, the flotilla reached Darwin on the 7th of December and arrived in Sydney on 21 December. After her arrival in Australia, Waterhen was engaged in routine duties with the Australian Squadron until 9 October 1934, when she was placed in reserve. She remained in reserve until April 1936, when she was recommissioned for a short period, after which she was once again placed into reserve. On 1 September 1939, Waterhen was recommissioned and made ready for war service. Her initial war duties were carrying out anti-submarine patrols out of Sydney. On 14 October 1939, in company with Stuart and Vendetta, Waterhen sailed for Singapore. On the same day as Waterhen sailed for Singapore, her sister ships Vampire and Voyager departed Fremantle, also bound for Singapore. The entire flotilla was under the command of Commander HML Waller, Royal Australian Navy. On 13 November, after all the destroyers had arrived at Singapore, the flotilla sailed for the Mediterranean. Whilst en route, the destroyers were dispatched to help search for the German boat pocket battleship Graf Spee. Waterhen arrived in Malta on 14th December and along with the other Australian destroyers formed the 19th Destroyer Division of the Mediterranean Fleet. At this stage of the war, Italy was still neutral, and as the Royal Navy had undisputed mastery of the Mediterranean, Waterhen and the other destroyers were engaged in routine patrols and fleet exercise. Following Italy's entry into the war, the fall of France, the strategic situation in the Mediterranean was completely changed. The British Mediterranean fleet now found itself virtually surrounded by hostile shores. On 17th of August 1940, Waterhen was part of the 4 screened British warships which were bombarding Italian positions in Libya. A week later, Waterhen was again off the coast of Libya, this time providing covering fire for the gunboat HMAS Ladybird as she attacked shipping and harbour facilities at Bardia. Following the Italian invasion of Greece on 28th of October 1940, Waterhen helped escort a convoy from Alexandria to Crete. After establishing a fueling base, the warships returned to Alexandria. In December 1940, Waterhen, as part of the inshore squadron, provided support for the British Army fighting in the Western Desert. On Christmas night, 1940, Waterhen intercepted the Italian supply ship Terramimo Giurido. After taking off her crew, Waterhen sank the vessel by gunfire. 5 days later, the Australian destroyer collided with and sank the British anti-submarine trawler HMS Bandolero. After completion of repairs, Waterhen was dispatched to the Aegean, where she was set to remain until April. On her return to the inshore squadron, Waterhen took part in operations in support of the army at Tobruk. On 14th of April, whilst at anchor in Tobruk Harbour, Waterhen was attacked by dive bombers. Fortunately, she was not damaged by this attack. 5 days later, accompanied by the destroyers Stuart and Voyager, Waterhen acted as the escort for the landing ship HMS Glengyle, as she carried commandos for a raid on the facilities at Bardia. For the remainder of April, she was engaged in operations designed to support the army during the campaigns in Greece and Crete. These operations included taking part in the evacuation of both Greece and Crete. In May 1941, the Tobruk ferry service was initiated using the destroyers of the inshore squadron. The object of the service was to provide logistic support for the Australian and other soldiers that were surrounded in Tobruk. On 28 of June 1941, Waterhen, in company with HMS Defender, departed Alexandria for Tobruk. At about 7:45 p.m, whilst off Sollum, both ships were attacked by dive bombers. Though neither ship was hit, Waterhen was badly damaged as a result of near misses from 3 sticks of bombs. The first sticks of bombs, which fell about 30 feet clear of the ship's port bow, caused a leak in the number 1 oil fuel tank, as well as carrying away the WT aerials. The second stick fell 50 feet astern of the ship. The final stick, which fell close alongside the ship's port side, caused the most damage. As a result of the third stick, the vessel developed a list to port. The boiler fires were blown out and the ship's wheel was jammed. The list was the result of an 8-foot-long hole below the waterline between the engine room and number 3 oil fuel tank. The engine room and the main cabin flat were flooded immediately. Flooding also occurred in the tiller flat and number 2 boiler room as a result of severe structural damage. Some 25 minutes after being attacked, the ship had developed a dangerous list to starboard and then was abandoned. 3.5 hours later, Waterhen was reboarded and the tow line was passed to HMS Defender. However, between 0015 and 0030, the list increased and the ship was once again abandoned, though the tow was continued. Finally, at about 0150 on the morning of 30th of June 1941, the fight to save the gallant ship was lost as the old chook rolled over and sank. HMAS Waterhen was the first ship of the Royal Australian Navy to be lost in the Second World War as a direct result of enemy action. Let us remember all those that served on board HMAS Waterhen, but also let us remember all those that gave the ultimate sacrifice throughout the Second World War, lest we forget.
Thank you, Brendan. We appreciate your support and for the research and knowledge imparted here today. Shrine Guard, take post. The remembrance parties will now lay the wreaths. So Lieutenant Giolans will lay a wreath on behalf of the Royal Australian Navy. Descendant Christine Kennedy will lay a wreath on behalf of all descendants. It's not Christine anyway. Chris Banfield will lay a wreath on behalf of the Naval Commemorative Committee of Victoria. For those of you that have a red poppy, you are invited to place it into the urn beside the stone of remembrance. For those that are able, please stand. Ode to our sailors. They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, afast on the ocean bed. Ode to the fallen. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget. Shrine Guard will dismount. Many thanks for your attendance here today, and a special thank you to Brendan for his support. That concludes the HMAS Waterhen service for this year. Thank you very much. And there we go.